Being an entrepreneur might be exciting, but it is also very risky too. Perhaps no event in recent history has proved this more accurately than the pandemic. In a few short weeks, the entire world shut down, and massive losses were incurred on all fronts, especially on the business front. The pandemic changed priorities, disrupted plans, scrambled existing patterns, and woke us up to the reality we all know but often love to forget. The reality that none of us can actually predict the future in spite of all our advancement in technology and the tools we've been able to invent. In this video, we're going to take a look at entrepreneurship in the post-pandemic era. When the pandemic hit first, the numbers were very discouraging. For the first time since 1949, France's GDP fell by 5.8%, the country's biggest fall since the mid-20th century. In the United States, unemployment and underemployment rose to unprecedented rates, surpassing the 40 million mark. If we didn't realize it before, it's now more than evident that our economies and their fundamentals are entirely breakable. The world has shifted before our eyes faster than anyone could have ever dared to imagine, and businesses need to develop different action plans depending on their industry if they are to survive. Notwithstanding, for entrepreneurs in certain industries, the pandemic was a major boon. Those into online shopping, video conferencing, video gaming, food delivery for instance, have a lot to be grateful for since the start of the pandemic. Business could not be better. But the story couldn't be any different for those who run hotels, restaurants, entertainment, or sports centers, or retail. Entrepreneurs in business sectors affected by the pandemic lost between 50 to 80% of their turnover in the past year, and many even lost a significant portion of their market value too. For instance, Lime, the urban e-scooter startup, used to be a stock company valued at about $2.4 billion as of 2019. However, in May of 2020, in a proposed investment by Uber, the company was valued at just $510 million. Airbnb also suffered a major hit as a result of the pandemic too. The company had planned to enter the stock market in 2020, but following the emergence of the COVID-19 virus and the consequent pandemic, the company had to postpone its IPO. The Financial Times reports that the company cut about 16% of its potential market value, taking its value from $31 billion to $26 billion. The company also announced last year that it would be laying off about a quarter of its workforce, which translates to about 1,900 employees. Even Uber lost about $2.9 billion and laid off about 3,000 employees, dropping its ride-sharing volume 80%. But it's not all dreary news. There's still a bit of positivity in the midst of all this. On the one hand, entrepreneurs are made of unbreakable stock. They do not back down easily and are true fighters by nature, with an ever-positive and resilient mindset. Therefore, we can be sure that entrepreneurs will bounce back from this because it's in their DNA too. Besides, there's no crisis that does not have an endpoint. This global crisis is only a cue for entrepreneurs to innovate and try something new, and even history supports this. The Black Death of the 14th century, for instance, there is no doubt that it completely transformed Europe forever in the way businesses and the economy as a whole were ran. The feudal system, which was much more prevalent at the time, was finally broken, and the trend of independent employment finally began to reign in the market. The Second World War also affected economic practices around the world as well. We saw the fall of the British Empire, which led to the rise of a new super economy, as well as the evolution of modern agriculture. Dating back to more recent history, we have the SARS Pandemic and the financial crisis of 2008, two 21st century global crises that completely changed the way the world went about business and life. The SARS pandemic, for instance, happened between 2002 and 2004, and one country that got the worst hit was China. Sad as the event was, the pandemic also opened the door for the e-commerce boom in the country. It was during the SARS pandemic that Alibaba went from a company with a few $1 million in turnover to an empire pulling in billions of dollars annually. When the pandemic first hit and the virus was spreading fast across China, the Alibaba workforce had to go into isolation. Alibaba was just 4 years old at the time, and the future was so unsure. Most companies at the time were suspending business activities temporarily, but this might have dealt a fatal blow to Alibaba, which had still not found a firm footing in its industry. Fortunately, the employees of Alibaba did not toe that path and gathered their computers and phones to begin working from home. In the end, the crisis turned out to be a transformative moment in the company's history. The company launched Taobao during the period of its outbreak. Taobao is Alibaba's first consumer-facing platform. And now, Alibaba continues to rank as the world's largest online market. The financial crisis of 2008, on the other hand, gave rise to the sharing economy that Uber and Airbnb have come to epitomize to us. People are able to share their resources with others, reduce their financial burden, and make a business out of it. To be fair, the COVID-19 pandemic is nothing like the financial crisis of 2008 or the SARS pandemic of 2002 to 2004. In fact, it is way bigger than even both of them combined, especially in terms of scale. The effects of the COVID pandemic were swift and extensive, and this made it impossible for any country's economy to handle the pandemic without damage. But entrepreneurs have bounced back since this pandemic. For instance, the pandemic birthed the push in technology that paved the way for online communication platforms like Zoom and Skype to rise to the forefront. We have also seen companies like DoorDash, Chewy.com, and Uber Eats improve sales significantly. Tech giants like Apple, Amazon, and Google have also improved their user interfaces while providing jobs to thousands who are previously unemployed or underemployed. So, what should the entrepreneur do in the light of such a history-defining global crisis? First, it's time to retire the old for the new. Any company operating with the same old business plan they developed before the pandemic is out of touch and will struggle with existing in the current times. You need a new business plan that reflects the entrepreneurial challenges of the time and helps you deal with the worst-case scenarios. So, look at your company's profile in the first 6 months of the pandemic and identify the changes you've made, as well as the factors that instigated those changes. After identifying these factors, imagine these factors escalate and then restructure your plan to take care of the imagined escalated situation. So, say the lockdown put you out of stock for about 3 weeks. Your plan should help you prepare for a situation where you're out of stock for another 9 weeks, and your plan should find your way out of that. Of course, it's also very important that you plan to have more cash in savings than you did before the pandemic as well. And talking about water, look into the financial aspect of your business. For your business to stay alive in unprecedented times, it must be financially healthy. Many creditors are currently out of funds. Getting loans is becoming more difficult, and even funding is taking longer to come through. So weed out those SKUs that aren't generating you enough money, and invest more in those that have the potential to become more profitable with just a little luck. It's going to be tough, but you need to make hard decisions for your business to survive. Another important thing to remember is that global crises always give rise to FOMO, which is what makes certain markets boom during a crisis and quickly fizzle out afterward. For instance, there was an unprecedented spike in the demand for hygiene products, 1,000 times more than the industry had ever seen. So consequently, many people began to invest. But you must keep in mind that such projects are volatile. So, try not to invest too heavily in capital-intensive, permanent projects like getting new heavy machinery or automating your plant to increase production capacity. Basically, any investment that would take years to give you a return of investment. You might want to avoid such projects for your own good. Next, you must manage risk. Every business comes with its own risks, but during times of crisis, those risks more than quadruple, and risk management becomes a survival skill. You must identify key areas in your business that are risk-prone and discuss with your stakeholders how you can minimize these risks. Remember, Your goal during a time of crisis is to secure as much funds as you can while minimizing expenditure, but in a way that keeps the business afloat. You don't want to make cuts that cost you much more in the future. And while you're doing that, don't forget to check up on your customers. Making new customers during a pandemic can be difficult, and that's why you should hold on to your loyal customers with a death grip. This is the time to dive into your database and find out what keeps your customers coming back to your business and begin to offer them more of that. Also, rather than working on all your SKUs at the same time, it might be better to pick out your strongest earners and get a good grip on them instead. Working on all your SKUs might be profitable in the end, but it might also be tragically unsuccessful. So pick your battles wisely. Next, prepare for the new normal. Working from home, partnering with local vendors and suppliers as against those from overseas, restricted travel etc. These are already the new normal. Start looking for local manufacturers and suppliers you can work with. Now, many refer to the COVID-19 pandemic as a once-in-a-century event. But if what the scientists say is anything to go by, then the next pandemic might hit much sooner than we all expect it to hit. It is very likely that we will see more pandemics in the next few decades. And if you think about it, in the last few decades, you've encountered a couple of major pandemics. What's to say we won't see another pandemic in the near future? The Cranfield Institute of Management explains that businesses will typically go through such kinds of crises in 3 phases. First, there will be the reaction and confusion phase. Confusion ended up costing businesses much more than any other thing during the pandemic. Many businesses didn't know where to turn and how to plan or strategize. Those that did, however, were able to deal better and go through the next stages. The next phase is the adjustment and coping stage, which is the phase where we are right now. Entrepreneurs need to give this phase their full attention, as this will determine whether or not the business makes it out of the crisis alive. And then finally, there is a re-emergence phase, which will see the rise in prevalence of a new normal, as we can evidently see at play right now. Many current business practices will become outdated. In fact, many already are, and only the fastest businesses to adapt will survive, as is pretty much evident in today's business scene. Ultimately, the relationship between pandemics and entrepreneurship is a complicated one. While pandemics have dealt the death blow for many businesses, they have also created new opportunities for entrepreneurs to innovate and be truly successful. In fact, many companies would have remained largely unknown had the pandemic not struck. Pandemics will definitely come and go, but one thing is sure: entrepreneurship will never not be viable. Only businesses that do not adapt will become extinct. That's all for entrepreneurship in the post-pandemic era. If you like this video and want to see more, make sure you subscribe to our channel and give this video a big thumbs up. See you next time.